Those type of people suck beyond imagination. Now, the protesters, in my opinion, are brave freedom fighters, okay? China is truly an evil empire. And I actually respect Trump for, if nothing else, standing up against the Chinese government. The left calls Trump a fascist. He's not. He was elected by the people, and if the people don't like him, they'll throw him out of office November of next year. President Xi is a fascist dictator who will rule that country with an iron fist until he dies or someone shoots him in the head. That's a fascist dictator, people. So for you dopey leftists who don't understand the definition of a fascist dictator, it's not Trump. Trump may be a loudmouth, fat loser. You make an argument for that, but he's not a fascist dictator. He's not a fascist. He's not a dictator. President Xi is both. Okay. So there you have it. Pay attention to Hong Kong if you would. If you see an article about it, read it. Nobody's talking about it except for the strong man. One more thing before we get to the essay on the great Don Imus passing, and that has to do with the podcast. We've kind of hit a lull. We were getting lots more listeners, lots more listenership, lots more fans, and now all of a sudden we've hit a lull. The problem probably is me. My topics aren't interesting enough. Maybe it's the weather's, it's the holiday season. People don't want to listen like they used to. Maybe it's you. You're sick of me running my pie hole. I don't know. However, you have a commitment from me to continue to do the best I can on the podcast. I'm in the process of upgrading the studios one more time. I got a set of headphones that help me hear my voice better. In fact, it was a Christmas gift from the trophy wife, a pair of Heil Sound headphones. They're wonderful. I'm in the early development stages of totally redoing the studio. Okay. New audio equipment, new computers, new tables, perhaps new microphones, new everything. It's going to be a sizable investment out of my pocket. And as you know, because you don't hear advertisers on this podcast yet, I make nothing from it yet, but I will. Trust me, one of these days. But if you would do us a favor to me, subscribe to the podcast, share the podcast with others. JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. That's where you hear the podcast, of course. I will send you an email. Most of you listening to the podcast get it on the email, and then you download it and listen to it at your leisure. Do me a favor if you would. Go ahead and send a link of the podcast to at least one of your buddies, one of your friends. Say, hey, listen to this knothead. See if you like him. If you like him, listen again. If you don't like him, send him an email and call him names. Do whatever you want, okay? I'd appreciate the help. JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, audio only, not video. Spreaker.com is where the podcast resides, okay? Okay, got it? Good. Thank you very much in advance. The podcast today, the essay today, the death of Don Imus. When I heard about this yesterday afternoon, I was saddened. And this was a little bit after 5 o'clock when I heard it on the news. I was working yesterday at the day job, heard it on the news. Oh man, Don Imus died, and my heart just sank. By the time I had gotten to my phone, I had no less than 3 people who had already said, hey, dude, did you hear about Imus dying? Okay, so thanks to those of you who reached out to me and let me know. I appreciate that. But one of the reasons that made me sad that Imus had died is because as we all get older, and we're all getting older, okay, each and every one of us, as we get older, as time goes on, our heroes die one by one. Art Bell died a couple of years, a little over a year ago. Don Imus died. He was older than Bell. Bell was 72. Imus was 79. Roger Friedman, who was a Fox News contributor, wrote for Parade Magazine, has his own website now, said of Don Imus, Imus was right-wing, but you had to love him anyway. In other words, Friedman is kind of a left-wing guy, but he was saying, you know what? For a right-wing guy, you had to love him. So even Friedman loved him. And when you think of Don Imus, most of you think, well, what do you think of Don Imus? Tell me his most defining moment. And most all of you will say the Rutgers girls basketball Nappy Headed Hos comment. And Imus was probably the original shock jock, okay? He was truly a trailblazer, but he was a trailblazer that after he blazed the trail, he lit it on fire, okay? And most all, if not all, of the successful ones are like that, okay? They push the envelope, push the envelope, push the envelope, and they push it until it breaks, and then they back off. Imus broke it lots of times, okay? And the Nappy Headed Hos comment was the one that broke it the biggest. And it took a long, long, long time for him to come back from that. Some will say he never did. What did he die of? I saw one source that said he died of lung disease. I know he had emphysema. He had also had cancer of the prostate. And he was not treating it with radiation. He was treating it holistically. So I don't know what he died of. Again, one source says lung disease, and he did have emphysema. But the thing about Imus that made him entertaining was the way he would criticize people. And he criticized everybody. Okay? He was your quintessential crotchety old man, or gutless weasels, or fat losers, and he'd mumble that into the microphone. But despite his criticism of everybody, most of those, in fact, I'd have to say all of those who were guests on his show understood that that was just part of the shtick. And he had a lot of people on his show. Ted Kennedy, in fact, he used to call Ted Kennedy a big fat-headed slob. He used to call Newt Gingrich. He said, well, Newt Gingrich is so horrible, he'd eat roadkill. He called Hillary Clinton Satan. He called Dick Cheney a war criminal. I mean, right, left, centrist, he made fun of them all. He called Bill Clinton a big fat pant load, okay? And at one time, he supported Bill Clinton for presidency. Bill Clinton was a guest on his show on a semi-regular basis once upon a time, as was John Kerry and John McCain and Mayor Dinkins and Mayor Giuliani. Bill Clinton was, like I said, Dan Rather, Tim Russert, Mike Wallace. All of these were guys that were on his show. Congressman Harold Ford, who was an up-and-coming congressman from, was it Tennessee or Kentucky? I can't remember. He's out of politics now. But he was a left of center up and coming congressman who, for some reason, Imus just liked and had on the show. And that was the thing about Imus. If he liked you, he was very loyal to you, and he had you on the show and didn't speak poorly of you. He would. He'd say, "Oh, Congressman Ford is the big fat loser." Well, no, he's not a loser. Actually, he's a pretty good guy. So he would criticize everybody, but on the ones that he liked, he'd back it off. So he'd push it as far as he could and then bring it back enough so that you knew that was just shtick, okay? What Imus would do, that was his shtick. He would go up to the line, then cross the line, and then back off and apologize, okay? Sort of apologize. And you could tell when he was being sincere about the apology, and you could tell when he wasn't being sincere about the apology. You could tell when he was crossing the line because he truly had disdain for an individual, and when he crossed the line just to get a laugh. At least I could tell. His first radio job, at age 28, by the way, he got into the business late. He was fired from his first radio job, 68, 69, somewhere around there, because he was doing a Eldridge Cleaver lookalike contest, okay? Now, if you're, what's the big deal about that? Well, at that time, Eldridge Cleaver, who was one of the founding members of the Black Panthers, was on the lam. The government was looking for him. He was on the FBI's most wanted list, and he was a fugitive. And Imus did a Eldridge Cleaver lookalike contest. Now, people thought that was racist. Why? Because Eldridge Cleaver was black? You can't make fun of black people? Imus was an alcoholic and a drug addict. In fact, he was a cocaine addict and lost jobs because of it up until the late 1980s. Some say he was racist. Some say he was sexist and homophobic. In fact, some of the things he made mention one time, him and Charles McCord and Bernard McGurk, two of his sidekicks from the early days. Snoop Dogg eats monkey meat. Well, he caught a bunch of shit for that. Why? Snoop Dogg is black and you said monkey. You're saying he's a monkey. Well, no, actually, he said Snoop Dogg eats monkey meat, okay? He caught a lot of shit for that. But here's what Imus would say. He said, look, I'm making fun of a guy. Are blacks and gays and women, are they immune from ridicule? No. He was ridiculed for making fun of Michael Jackson, okay? And the way Imus defended that, he says, look, Michael Jackson is a pervert pedophile, not Mother Teresa. Why can't I make fun of him? Now, was he a pervert and pedophile? A lot of people say he was. Laura Ingraham said it was because of her, or because of him, that she got started in radio. Don Imus was brutally honest to a fault. He had absolutely no filter. People have told me I have no filter. Compared to Don Imus, I've got a big filter, okay? He really did speak his mind. Absolutely no filter. He did whatever he wanted. His wife, second wife, was 25 years younger than him, the former Deidre Coleman. In fact, I think she was like, I want to say 30, and he was 55 when they got married. And all kinds of jokes on the show were about that. And, Charles and Bernard were the biggest joke tellers and would just totally criticize Imus. So, and again, nobody was immune from the ridicule of Don Imus, including himself. In fact, Bernard McGurk at one time said, yeah, Imus met Deidre, his new wife, met her on a school playground. He lured her in with a Snickers bar, okay? One time, Imus, who wasn't exactly a muscular individual, and that's being kind, talked about how he's working out in the gym with 5-pound barbells. And McGurk said, 5-pound barbells? Why, I do curls with my penis with 5-pound barbells. So Imus was the brunt of a lot of the jokes on his show as well. Imus would take any little imperfection and just criticize it to the max. They did the same thing with him. He marries a young gal. They call him a pedophile. He works out in the gym with not much weight. They call him a weakling. Imus was not immune to his own jokes either. Okay. One time he had Bill Clinton on the air, and he really asked Bill Clinton, hey, why did you have AstroTurf in the back of your pickup truck? Nobody does that. You weren't going to be playing football in the back of that truck. And Clinton just laughed. It's funny. He asked about Clinton. What do you think about Clinton? This was Mike Wallace asked him one time in an interview. What do you think about President Clinton? He said, well, I think Clinton just wants to eat a lot of food and get babes, but I like him. So there he was. He criticized him, made fun of him, poked big fun at his weight and his womanizing, and then said, yeah, but I like the guy. And that's how Imus was. Imus was made and betrayed by his mouth. That's according to AP. Made, yes. Betrayed, I don't believe that. I don't think so at all. Only thing he ever said he regretted, in fact, he was always a guy with I have no regrets, which is maybe that's why I like him, because that's how I live through life. But the only thing I really heard him say he seriously regretted was the Nappy Headed Hos comment. He says, because, they weren't in the spotlight. They weren't celebrities. They were just girl basketball players, played for Rutgers University, college basketball players. He shouldn't have criticized him, and he realized it, and he paid the price for that, okay? But again, lived life with no regrets except for maybe that. Maybe that's why I liked him. You take the good and the bad. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. Once upon a time, Time magazine called Don Imus one of the 25 most influential Americans. Not Americans in entertainment, not Americans on the radio, not Americans in media. 25 most influential Americans. You don't get that moniker straddling fences, my friend. You get it by speaking your mind. Joe Scarborough, Morning Joe on MSNBC. He subbed for Imus a time or two, okay? And when Imus was booted from MSNBC because of his Nappy Headed Hos comment, they replaced Imus in the morning with Morning Joe. So Scarborough will say, look, I have a lot to be thankful for Don Imus about. He said, nobody else on cable network never allowed anybody to talk that much for that long.